People often say the deposit return is quite expensive. CPRE's cost benefit showed there's savings to local councils, there's no cost to the public purse. The only people that pay for the system are those who pollute, which are the people who don't return their containers, and the producers that make the products.
I think they are not the cheapest way in which you can manage the material, but they are the way there is, as far as we can see, we don't see measures that achieve the same level of performance, both in terms of the capture of the material for recycling and also the effect on litter. So if we look at the costs, we also have to look at the benefits. And in terms of the net analysis on costs and benefits, our own analysis suggests that yes, the cost may be a little higher than typically what you might be paying in door-to-door collection services, but you don't get the same level of benefit from those services. So in terms of a full cost-benefit analysis, they're justifiable on the basis of the elimination of the litter, which is particularly important in the case of beverage container schemes.
No, a deposit is different from taxation. If you have a tax for each package, you have to pay this tax. By a deposit, you get it back.
No, of course not. Taxation, then you lose your money, and with a deposit system, you get your money back. Can I be shorter?
No, taxation is something that you pay and you don't get back. Deposit is something that you give and you get back, simply.
It's not a tax when you get your money back. People say, oh, it's a tax. It's not a tax. If you're getting your money back, it's a deposit.
A deposit is not a form of taxation. It's simply a way of incentivizing the return into the proper system of management of the material. And academics have looked at deposits, advanced disposal fees and so forth over the years. And they've suggested that this is an efficient system.
We researched any study that has ever been done looking at the costs of removing those containers from the municipal system. We found 20 that were done all over the world by various different consultants and agencies. All 20 said the same thing, that municipalities will have a net savings. And the reason is that when we think about the costs that municipalities pay for beverage containers, they're not just paying to collect them for recycling, they're paying to put them in the garbage, they're paying to clean up the litter. So when you factor in all of the savings that are associated with removing those containers from the municipal system, you actually end up saving money.
There are studies like the Eunomia study, which has analyzed this for the UK, but also others, showing that local authorities and municipalities are not losing money. They can do things like reducing the pickup frequency. So, for example, I live in Germany. We had our curbside bin being picked up every week, and now this is being reduced not only to fortnight but even to a monthly collection, and that saves a lot of costs, transport costs, logistic costs, and also CO2 emissions. But that's just part of the equation. There is even more.
You have to look at the costs that you're saving, not only from the recyclables, but when deposit return systems are put in place, they not only draw material from the recycling stream, they also draw material from the disposal stream. So there's a cost savings there from collecting those materials and disposing of them and at the tipping fee. And then there's also a benefit to the community from reduced litter. And litter collection is also very expensive. So the correct way to do accounting is to do full cost accounting and to take all of those things into account and look at what your situation is before and what it is after. Make your comparison, and you'll always find that there's a net cost savings for the municipalities.
Yes, because it's the one that is most abundant, because we consume them outside of the house. It's what we consume. When you go in the outbounds, what do you carry with you? A bottle of water or a beer or a Coke. And those are the packaging that it's most abundant. So you need a solution, and there is a solution that works everywhere in the world where they introduce this measure, it cleans up the environment from cans and bottles. So do it.
I think we need to move beyond the idea that we can take one measure for everything. That we can basically, that you can put up signs by the side of the road and say, if we just communicate and inform people enough, then that will be the measure to tackle all that. It doesn't work like that. We need specific measures that help to counter the problems that specific products cause.
Nonprofit groups in Hawaii have statistics from beach cleanups conducted every year over the years, and they found that within 2 years of implementation of their container deposit law, that they had a 50% reduction in the percentage of beverage container litter. So if you look at the percentage of beverage container litter as a percent of total litter that they found, it was in the range of 15, 16, 17%. And then after the implementation of the container deposit law, it was around 6%. So it dropped tremendously, and that was with only a 5-cent deposit, a very low deposit value. And it was also with a container deposit law that didn't cover all types of beverages.
It works tremendously, actually. It's people often say there's like no silver bullet, but if we introduce deposits, it's like an instant reduction of litter of like 40% because the system basically is so effective. People just want to bring the bottle back, to get the money back. So it's extremely effective.
The reason why you don't see bottles and cans on the beaches of California is because of the deposit system.
First of all, we're seeing the existing curbside recycling system in most jurisdictions where it's quite mature has plateaued. It's flatlined. It's gone as far as it can possibly go.
Well, I think the interest in deposit return system grows because of the marine litter issue. That is becoming the number one driver on global level. And looking at the composition of marine litter, we know that 80% of it is coming from land, it's land-based, and that approximately 40% of this 80% is beverage packaging. So if you add caps of beverage bottles, glass bottles, plastic bottles, cans, and beverage cartons, altogether they are the number one issue in marine litter. And you can just take that away by implementing a low-hanging fruit approach, which is deposit legislation. I mean, that doesn't cost a lot for government to do it. They just have to do it. There are no costs for the governments involved. It's just making up a good law.
I think there's an increasing interest in deposit return around the world because people are getting sick of litter. The previous voluntary industry council cleanup programs are failing. And of course, we now have the very serious problem of marine plastic pollution. Plastic bottles are an enormous contributor, particularly when they break up into microplastic, to serious and dangerous marine plastic pollution. People want action.
I think, to me, that's sometimes a bit of a mystery. And one question I like to ask companies is, well, how could we design a deposit system that you would actually support? What are the features that are really the ones that you're fundamentally objecting to? And typically we don't get a very responsive answer to that question, which suggests that much of the argument is a rather dogmatic one and isn't really based on evidence and rational responses to the issue. They do work well, and they're contributing to alleviating some of the major global problems we have.
I think for retailers, they feel resistant to the system partly because they themselves are producers, but also that they fear that people will perceive their shops differently, that somehow their shops will be dirty or smelly, that they'll sort of become a bit of a waste handling facility. But the evidence from around the world shows that the supermarket can function perfectly well with a deposit return system. And in fact, it drives people to come into their stores because they want to return the containers. They then end up with money in their hand, which they want to spend.
I think it's basically a fear factor. They don't really understand the benefits to the retail system, and they're worried that they will take up lots of space. They worry that it will give them a lot of costs. But actually, when you look at the statistics and the data, it just shows that that is just not going to be the case.
I think the retailers are a little bit inflexible, and I think they've been told false things, like somehow this is going to hurt their business. And in fact, in the United States, businesses have done fine with recycling both in the store and outside the store.
Most of the retailers that we hear from have no experience taking back containers. What we do know is that the retailers that are taking back containers in jurisdictions like Norway, Germany, and even in Quebec, where they have invested time and effort into figuring out how to do it efficiently, they see real results. They see increased people through their shops, and they're making revenue because they're getting paid for every unit that they collect.
So if a retailer is capable of organizing the system in such a way that he also takes the advantages, well, then there's no reason for the retailer to be against it.
Both recycling and reusing bottles and cans saves up a lot of resources. Resources that we don't have to take from the soil, metals that we don't have to mine, plastics oil that we don't have to bring up from the soil. By reusing all those materials, instead of in the end incinerating it, we basically save a lot of CO2 in that way, and it's actually one of the most efficient ways to save CO2.
It's the loss of that benefit, that energy saving from recycling the material that we're losing when we're below the levels that we can obtain in terms of recycling from the deposit scheme. We have to get as close to 100% as we can, and we're not in the luxury anymore of, when we're trying to address this problem of climate change, of turning down measures that we know will work and which contribute to achieving our climate change objectives, and pretending that we can ignore them. We have to do them.